Welcome to Joy in the Journey, an exploration of joy on a global scale. I'd like to start by sharing our story and introduce your presenters today. My name is Dr. Carol Lisk, and I'd like to introduce Dr. Janine Behrendt, who's going to be presenting this session of our symposium. Interestingly, this joyful journey started at a local level when we were redesigning our curriculum and integrated the IHI white paper on joy in work. And we realized as a team that in order to appropriately teach it, we needed to live it because all of our students are in clinical settings, and we thought it would be important for us to be able to experience it as well. Moving forward, discussing this with colleagues, international colleagues in Sigma, we moved to our next stage, which was exploring current knowledge about joy in work, particularly with nurses with a systematic review. And then our third presentation will be discussing our global investigation, an international survey sent to nurses to explore their perception of joy in work. The purpose of our presentation today is to allow you to understand the concept of joy in work as a contemporary healthcare trend in all professional domains, describe personal strategies at an individual level to help create and sustain a culture of joy, and to define how a culture of joy enhances the collaboration and engagement within a nursing team. So why does joy matter? Well, joy matters more importantly in the last year and a half because of the crisis that we experienced. You'd see some of these TikTok videos with nurses trying to find a little joy in the midst of both chaos and heartbreak. We also know that when we feel joy, when we feel that personal contentment with our work, nurses are more likely to remain in their career rather than changing careers. It assists with recruitment and retention. And also identifying evidence-based approaches to transform the culture allows the culture to sustain. It's no longer just an accident. It's not serendipitous, but it's intentional. And it helps the individual as well as the team to identify ways to bring more joy to their work and ultimately experience professional success and team success. So essentially, joy does not simply happen to us. We have to choose it. We have to work it, and we have to keep choosing it every day. So as I mentioned in the introduction, because we had integrated this into our curriculum, we recognized that we needed to identify intentional strategies, both individually as professionals and as a team. We actually have a very cohesive, collaborative professional group. And a lot of it is because of the style and the dynamic of the team. But we knew that in order to not just create it, but maintain it and sustain it, we needed to integrate intentional strategies.
Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Janine Behrendt, as Dr. Lisk mentioned. I'm here today with Dr. Lisk because I'm a former member of Dr. Lisk's Joyful team. I had the opportunity to watch the team start this initiative and then grow their joyful culture over the years. What the IHI framework for improving joy in work serves as a guide for healthcare organizations, teams, and individuals to improve joy. This framework identifies 4 steps that leaders can take to increase joy in the workplace. The first step is to ask questions that matter. These questions should focus on developing solutions with the team and not for the team. The second step, what gets in the way of meeting the professional, social, and psychological joy of the team members? Third, assume a shared responsibility to remove those impediments that were identified in the second step. And number 4, use improvement science to allow leaders to determine their actions if their actions are effective. The IHI framework includes 9 critical components. These 9 components apply to the organization's senior leaders. You can see that they're listed there on the slide. But on the next slide, I'll begin to highlight the 4 that this team focused on. Specifically, the team focused on real-time measurement, wellness and resilience, daily improvement, and camaraderie and teamwork. Real-time measurement includes collecting and analyzing data to enable regular feedback about the system's performance for continuous improvement. On this team, daily, weekly, and monthly feedback was provided. Dr. Lisk met with each team member to provide feedback about personal and professional goals, as well as performance about the individual and the team. The team also provides real-time measurement informally through conversations with peers. The IHI framework indicates that the organization must also value the health and wellness of each individual employee. In this case, the organization provides opportunities for employees to engage in wellness activities as a benefit of employment. The team takes advantage of these benefits and creates social activities around the various opportunities. According to the framework, the organization also uses improvement science to recognize opportunities to improve. The team chose a collaborative, interdisciplinary approach to student success. The team looks for enhancements and impediments to student success through conversations as well as quantitative data collection. Opportunities for improvement are addressed, and the team collaboratively participates in a peer review process to calibrate their own performance. These improvement processes are part of the team's daily work. And camaraderie and teamwork are also included in the IHI framework as a critical component. However, the team's experience has been that as joy improves, so does the teamwork and camaraderie. The team has grown to demonstrate social cohesion, increased productivity, and a shared understanding of the team's culture and values.
So what were the results and outcomes? Well, honestly, it's ongoing. What's interesting about this is we were very careful to ensure that people that joined our team in hiring new staff or somebody transferring into the team, that they bought into our joyful space. We did notice a tremendous improvement in enhanced team collaboration and communication. I think having these strategic initiatives that we all bought into allowed us to be more transparent. It was a safe space. Staff were very comfortable accepting and managing change because they took ownership in it. Again, I mentioned that trust and transparency. It was fascinating, the peer-to-peer support that was given. Shadowing phone calls with students and then providing input, sitting in and observing a live webinar in our virtual workspace and then providing input with each other. Because so many of the personalities, while different, we have this common goal. We inspired each other, and because of the transparency, there was a strong sense of integrity, not just in our individual workspace, but in our team collaboration. We also found that the team was developing with great strides. Many members, several members of the team have moved into leadership positions, not the least of which is my co-presenter, Dr. Janine Barrett. And we find ways for people to shine in the areas that they enjoy the most. So in other words, letting them find joy in their work also allowed them to continue to grow in those areas about which they were most passionate. So it enhanced their satisfaction, certainly enhanced their retention, and our students feel our joy. Students have actually mentioned in our live webinars that they enjoy the interaction between faculty because they see that collaborative approach with each other, and they start to learn as a graduate nurse that it's about collaboration. It's not about right or wrong. It's about best practices. So this intentional work allowed us to create and maintain this joyful space and make it a great place to work. The most important part is, how do we keep joy alive? Well, it truly is one of those things that you have to do intentionally every day. I often recall when we used to listen to the radio early in the morning, you'd hear these radio disc jockeys, and they're always upbeat and they're happy. And you know that their life must have moments where they don't feel like coming on air and speaking real positively. We try to look at it like that we are presenting ourselves in our workspace to each other. But the saying goes, as you think, so shall your actions be. And we found that by enculturating this on a day-to-day basis, letting our new hires know that it's their role to notice when we start becoming aberrant, and letting us know what we need to do to redirect our joy. Increasing that accountability, as I mentioned, with peer reflection and debriefing, and not just with the lead faculty, but with each other. Everybody has something to offer. And that personal sense of self-regulation. It's okay not to have a perfect day every day, but it's okay also to know when you need to just step back, take a break, and then come back to whether it's an initiative or a conversation. And ultimately, it's about maintaining awareness. I'm very aware of Dr. Rick Ricciardi's Infused Joy call to action and the ABCs. A is the awareness. We have to be aware of the importance of a joyful culture, of maintaining that culture, and ultimately always entertaining the possibilities. Audrey Hepburn is a supporter of Sigma. She is a tremendous international advocate. And she recognized and stated that to plant a garden is to believe in tomorrow. And much of the joy that we experience are the seeds that we plant. We're always looking for ways for the joy to blossom. It's truly been a pleasure presenting our team journey with you today. And if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Dr. Barrett, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about our personal experience implementing the IHI framework, or any future questions with respect to assisting your team implement them. We also have included our bibliography should you like to do any additional research. And again, thank you so much and have a great day.
Hi, I'm Dr. Naomi Tatisi, and I'm excited to share the work of our international research team is doing on the topic Joy at Work. Dr. Carol Lisk and Ms. Janine Bennett's integration of a team-based approach to joy at work within their workplace prompted this further exploration of the experiences of registered nurses' joy at work. Our team decided to use a systematic review of the literature to identify any existing gaps and ascertain the impact of the IHI's framework for joy at work. The hedonic view of happiness is very old, conceptualized by Aristippus of Cyrene around the 4th century BC, who aligned happiness with pleasure, or stating that only what is pleasant or has pleasant consequences is intrinsically good. Today, the hedonic approach to happiness is notably represented by the philosophic works of Hebron and Sumner. In psychology, it is focused on the concept of subjective well-being that includes positive emotions and life satisfaction. Current definitions of joy fail to distinguish it from other positive emotions, for example, happiness, attitudes such as optimism, and traits, positive facets of extroversion. Further clouding a balanced view of joy is the unknown assimilation of eudaimonic characteristics of joy by nurses into their working lives. To understand what drives nurses to live a more fulfilling working life remains a challenge for researchers. To support this assertion, the researchers have undertaken a systematic review of the literature to identify the efficacy of interventions that could improve eudaimonic joy at work among nurses. Aristotle was the originator of the concept of eudaimonia, and it means true nature. He deemed happiness to be a vulgar idea, stressing that not all desires are worth pursuing, as Even though some of them may yield pleasure, they would not produce wellness. Aristotle thought that true happiness is found by leading a virtuous life and doing what is worth doing. He argued that realizing human potential is the ultimate human goal. This idea was further developed in history by prominent thinkers such as Stoics, who stressed the value of self-discipline, and John Locke, who argued that happiness is pursued through prudence. Joy is a connection with others, transcending the individual experience. This descriptor of joy is apt when considering joy in the context of work, especially nursing work, which is centred on others and often in the context of a team. The formation of our team was achieved through Sigma connections and collegial relationships. Dr. Carol Lisk's experience working with faculty to create and sustain a joyful workplace provided the impetus for this program of research, including our deep dive into the literature. Ms. Sally French provided expert advice on reviewing literature systematically and the subsequent identification of 8,000 plus articles which meet our search parameters. The research question the systematic review is seeking to answer is, are there insights from joy in the workplace that can be used to improve and sustain nurses' working life? The research question was further broken down into 4 sections using the PICO acronym. Population, nurses who are registered or licensed to practice. Intervention, any application or interventions providing insights into joy in the workplace. Comparator, the status quo according to any existing measures. And the outcome, efficacy of interventions related to improving and sustaining joy at work for nurses. The study's secondary outcome is to determine the efficacy of the 9 critical components for improving joy at work as defined by the IHI framework for improving joy in the workplace. Real-time measurement, wellness and resilience, daily improvement, camaraderie and teamwork, physical and psychological safety, meaning and purpose, choice and autonomy, recognition and rewards, and participative management. It is 4 years since the Institute of Health released its framework for improving joy at work. Initial searches of the literature by the team found little evaluative data on the IHI framework for improving joy in the workplace. 2 researchers from the team independently screened 8,039 titles and abstracts, resulting in 628 articles requiring screening for full text inclusion. A third researcher resolved any conflicts in the title abstract search. Both quantitative and qualitative studies will be included in the final full text selection of articles. The effectiveness of interventions and the IH framework for joy at work have mostly been evaluated quantitatively. Instruments measuring happiness, often used as a proxy for joy, along with instruments measuring satisfaction at work, are prolific in the literature. There are few qualitative studies on joy at work, a surprising early finding. The assumption being that the experience of nurses' joy would be captured using qualitative methods of data collection. The most dominant intervention for joy is mindfulness, a finding that could be explained by the prevalence of studies on burnout and the rise to prominence of mindfulness as a strategy to alleviate or moderate stress. Data extraction from the final full text articles will include author, year, country, studies design, participant demographics, baseline characteristics, characteristics of interventions, and study results. A second reviewer will check data extraction outcomes. Disagreement will be resolved using a third reviewer until a majority vote has been reached. If data is missing, authors of the included papers will be contacted. This systematic review will also critically appraise the final full-text articles to measure methodological rigour. The mixed methods appraisal tool will require 2 researchers to independently review each article with a 3rd researcher to resolve any conflict. Findings and recommendations from this review of the literature will further inform individual and organisational practices to improve and sustain nurses' joy at work. This systematic review of the literature has informed a quantitative study which used social media to recruit and survey nurses globally on their perceptions of joy at work. Within this study, which will be presented shortly by Professor Michael J. Dino, also acknowledged that COVID-19 could be a potential confounder. And it was examined, and the results of this study will now be presented. On behalf of the research team, I would like to express my thanks for your interest in this topic and attendance at our symposium on joy at work.
Hello everyone, this is Michael Joseph, and I'm pleased to share the preliminary descriptive outcomes of the quantitative study about joy at work. The study is designed to answer the research question, what is the perception of nurses' individual joy? The study received ethics approval from the QUT Human Research Ethics Committee and was also endorsed by the Our Lady of Fatima University Research Development and Innovation Center. The research method was an online survey of a purposive sample of international registered nurses. Participants were recruited via professional organizations' social networking sites. Registered nurses were supplied research information, and participants provided consent at the beginning of the survey. They also received Zoom virtual backgrounds as tokens in their participation. The survey was comprised of 2 questionnaires, the Joy at Work Scale by Jenna and Padhan in 2017, and the Vocation Identity Questionnaire or VIQ by Dreher et al. In 2007, plus 4 researcher-developed Likert scale questions about the impact of the pandemic on work relationship and load. The 18-item Joy at Work survey assessed 3 subscales, namely meaning, engagement, and growth, compassion, sensitivity, and respect, and trust, support, and flexibility. The 9-item VIQ measured sense of calling and finding joy and meaning in life's work. 4 researcher-developed questions were also included to determine if COVID-19 is a confounder for joy at work. The convenient sample of nurses working in several countries possessed a bachelor's degree as a minimum qualification and were solicited through social media. Completion of the Joy at Work scale, VIQ scale, demographics, and IHI questions was voluntary and preserved anonymity. Aggregate data was analyzed and informed recommendations for both individual nurse and the healthcare organizations about the current perception of joy in the workplace, providing a greater understanding of these factors and the potential reach and efficiency of the IHI framework to improve joy at work in the global nursing workforce. Our study involved 250 complete responses from nurses in 14 countries globally, with the majority coming from the Philippines, United States of America, and Indonesia. 39% and 37% of our nurses are working in the academic and critical care settings, respectively. More than half, or 52%, are within the 0 to 10 years of service bracket, followed by 11 to 20 years of service bracket at 35%. More than half of our respondents are female at 68%. The Joy at Work scale is an 18-item measure utilizes a Likert style rating scale from 1, which is strongly disagree, to 5 to strongly agree. The questionnaire measures respondents' agreement on 3 areas of joy at work. Questions pertaining to meaning, engagement, and growth received mean scores of 1.36 to 2.72 with standard deviations of 0.49 to 1.13. Items relating to compassion, sensitivity, and respect received mean scores of 1.53 0.54 to 1.97 with standard deviations from 0.58 to 0.76. Attributes of trust, support, and flexibility received mean scores of 1.53 to 2.32, having standard deviations of 0.63 to 0.92. Vocation Identity Questionnaire received mean scores from 1.66 to 2.85 with standard deviations between 0.60 to 1.29. While COVID questions received mean scores of 1.84 to 2.41 with 0.89 to 1.04 standard deviation values. Overall, trust, support, and flexibility from the Joy at Work scale received the most homogeneous agreement from our nurse respondents. Descriptive findings in this area communicate the below average to average work satisfaction and well-being among our nurse respondents. This outcome also concurs with the responses from the Vocation Identity Questionnaire. This might be due to the current scenario where our nurses are providing services at the forefront. The preliminary results of this exploratory research project provided an initial portrait of joy at work from the survey responses from registered nurses. Joy is undeniably a valuable concept in workplace experience among our nurses. The subject communicate that joy is an essential workplace aspect that may directly influence other constructs in the work milieu. Moving forward, this study will continue to explore joy at work among nurses from the pilot data collected and will perform the next phase of the data analysis process to include potential modeling between and among the constructs of Joy at Work scale and Vocation Identity Questionnaire and test of confounding.